We finally got our rainwater system installed, but now what do we do with this barren wasteland behind us? Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and the rainwater catchment system was Jonathan's baby, but the landscape stuff, that's mine. And so I went in search of some type of a turf that we could put here that would require very little maintenance and that had very low water requirement, because we're in the middle of a drought and we just don't have much water. And I was thrilled when I discovered Brandon from Rocky Mountain BioAg and an incredible turf that they have. So in this video, we're going to show you what we're going to do here as we talk to Brandon and kind of understand why we pick the turf that we do and why it might be a great solution for your yard.
Hey, Provident Preppers, we have something incredibly exciting for you today. I'd like to introduce you to Brandon from Rocky Mountain BioAg. And I reached out to him a few days ago because you know how we had installed those water catchment tanks for Jonathan, right? How big are your tanks? I forgot.
It's total 2,500 gallons.
Total 2,500 gallons. But anyway, there's two of them, and we couldn't finish some of our landscape or do anything to it until those were in place. And then we had supply issues, so it's kind of really been a mess for a little while. So as soon as those were all covered, I wanted to plant, I can't plant grass because we have a real drought situation here, right? And so we've got to be really careful. I want something that is incredibly low maintenance, that is drought tolerant, and that could be used like for chicken fodder, where I could have some of the animals go out occasionally. The main purpose is to provide erosion control because it's on a hill, right? A beautiful green area where it can be a nice family environment, because right now it is dry and it is dusty and we get all kinds of crazy weeds in it. So as I was doing my research, the only place that I found this really cool mixture, and it was from BioAg. So I reached out to Brandon and was super excited as he told me more about this. It's a drought tolerant turf seed blend with microclover. But Brandon, you have to explain it all to me because I'm just a baby in this. I know what I want, and I really want it to be a natural, something that's going to just take off and be happy, right?
Sure, not a problem.
A lot of stuff. So go for it.
Yeah, not a problem. So we developed actually this mix approximately, I would say, 4 to 5 years ago. It was actually developed when we very first started as a cover crop for the hemp industry here in Colorado. Everybody was using black plastics and all of these other, things that definitely weren't sustainable. The fields were ugly, and so we worked and developed this turf grass blend mix that we had to have, drought tolerance, all of these different little things. And so we worked actually with the company to do it. And then once we figured it out and which exact items we wanted in there, we produced the actual blend. And so that's where it started at. And so it would be used as a cover crop to start. And then we started thinking more and more, not only a cover crop for fields, but then also for people being able to utilize it in their actual lawns or, green areas that they wanted low maintenance, low water requirements. And just by chance, 4 or 5 years later now, as you know, across the nation, it's major drought issues. You hear about it every day. And so it wasn't us that developed it. I mean, you look back and really, God put these things in place years ago. But what it contains is there's a couple of different fescues it contains. They're fine fescues, as well as the microclover, like Kylene said. So we actually ended up choosing a creeping red fescue and a hard red fescue, which the reasons why are those are very drought tolerant. They have deep roots, which will withstand, drought conditions. There is still some maintenance to them, but it's not nearly like what you would see in a Kentucky bluegrass or some of these other grasses that you would plant. And then the microclover, we knew that we didn't want to have to put a ton of fertilization or put a ton of maintenance into it. We wanted to kind of get it established and then allow it to come up and kind of almost, feed itself. And since clovers, there was Pipilina microclover. Microclover is a very small clover. It's starting to become well known as something that it's called an eco lawn per se. But we also added some of that into the mix as well. So it would naturally fix nitrogen from the atmosphere to provide some nitrogen into the growing system. So that's how we came up with the actual blend. It's a creeping red fescue, a hard red fescue, and then Pipilina microclover. It also does contain something called a nitro coat, which basically that's fancy. It's a rhizobia bacteria that basically populates on the nodules or on the roots of the actual microclover, which that fixes nitrogen. And then as you take care of it, you can mow it very low if you need to. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just mulch it. And when you mulch this, then you're returning that naturally back into the soil, the nitrogen and some of the nutrients or the nutrition that you may put on the soil before. Kind of like what I said before, it's like a forest, right? So the plants grow up, they drop their leaves, and it returns it. It recycles all of the things back to the soil. So that's kind of how we developed it, and it works great. It's low water needs. It's like I said, drought tolerant. It has deep roots. It helps feed the soil microbiology. It fixes nitrogen, so you don't have to really fertilize it. There's not much nutritional requirements where you're always putting fertilizers out and things like that. So that's how it was developed.
See, it's like this miracle stuff. I am super excited to try it. Now, if I never mowed it, how tall would it get?
That's dependent on water, right? I mean, that's what it all goes back to. So it depends on the water needs. If it's a very high drought year, there's a chance it might only grow 6 inches tall. Now, if all of a sudden we have tons and tons of rain, which I pray we do get at some point, what'll happen is it will grow taller. It could get potentially 8 inches, 12 inches, something like that, but it's all dependent on moisture. And how much you're putting onto it. So that's really the major factor. Usually the lawn, just to keep it going, you might have to put a little bit of water on it a couple of times a week, but very little. And then not only that, but with the actual moisture that you receive naturally, like where we're at here in Montrose, we get about 12 inches of precipitation a year, which is very little.
That's about where we are too. Yeah,
exactly. So it's perfect. Yeah. So that's talking snow, rain, mist if we get it. You name it. So everybody's like, oh, you live in Colorado, that's so great. It's like, no, we live in a high desert valley. It's actually it's a desert here. It's just people think Colorado and they think mountains and snow and all this moisture, and it's not that way. So that's kind of how it works. So you put very little water just to make sure it stays established. And even so, once those roots get down and nice and established, it's going to stay living. So maybe it will go through a point where, oh, you know what? It starts to brown out because it's not enough water or something like that. A little bit more rain comes or you put a little water on it, it keeps it still living. So it works great as erosion control, ground cover. Like I said, we developed it actually as a cover crop to keep the soils covered and the fields looking nice. And then what's great about it is it can be used in, overseedings, reseeding. So as a stand, it's kind of how it was developed.
So there's a piece right outside my back patio, and it's just a small little area where we have regular grass that actually has a lot of weeds in it.
Yeah.
Because we're talking farmland here. So when if I just reseed over the top of that, what will happen?
So what it'll do is if you overseed or reseed over the top of it, this is actually going to start to establish, it should start to choke out the weeds. Now, for something like that, what I would suggest, if there's a lot of weeds in there, you may want to do a little bit of control on the weeds first, not necessarily chemical control. We have a product called Fiesta. It's actually chelated iron, and it's toxic to weeds, but not to lawns.
That's cool.
Lawns like iron.
Interesting.
And we've been distributing that for a while, and you can spray the weeds out, get the weeds under control, then come over, overseed it, get that to establish. And then as you grow a thicker and thicker in a lawn, it will naturally choke out the weeds, which that's kind of like the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Now, once this gets established, though, we're not going to want to use those selective weed killers like Fiesta due to the fact that it kills broadleaf weeds. Well, clover is a broadleaf, so we don't want to kill the clover out of the lawn. So that's one of the things you look at a lot of times, like in my lawn. I have an eco lawn at my house even, and I'll even sometimes hand weed it just like with a normal weeder. It's just it's like a V point, and I go out, and if there's dandelions or things coming up that I don't like, then I'll sometimes get rid of them. But for the most part, I just try to naturally leave it, even with the dandelions coming up.
I'm a dandelion fan.
Yeah, my neighbors think I'm crazy, and the homeowners association I live in, they think we're crazy, but it's like, look up eco lawns, understand like what we're doing. This doesn't all have to be perfect,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited. So how long would I anticipate for it to be able to be established enough that kids could run on it?
Sure. You're going to be looking at about 26 to 32 days for the first mowing. So
Okay.
after
That's
you
pretty
plant
fast.
it,
That's not bad.
yeah, it's pretty quick. We developed it, so it would actually start to grow quickly, get it to the first mowing. That was kind of the whole point when we developed it, because like I said, it was in a field. So we were wanting to be able to plant something early spring, get it established, and then be able to have traffic on it, into May. So plant it like in April, 1st of April, whenever those temperatures just start to come up here at least, and then be able to have some pretty good traffic on it, by May. So it might take a little longer. It just depends, on water, things like that, to make sure that it establishes quickly. But it's
so
pretty,
cool.
yeah, it's pretty, it's traffic tolerant once it, gets all the way established, and even as it's establishing. So, but first mowing is about 26 to 32 days.
So you talked about it as a cover crop. Do you ever use it in orchards?
Absolutely. That's actually when we were developing it. That's exactly vineyards and orchards both. So
That's
those
cool.
two, yeah, because it works also in shade. So it works good in shade as well as, some direct sunlight. Direct sunlight, it is, it's just like anything, we all wither away in direct sunlight. So I don't want to say it withers away, but it's just definitely, it likes some shade too. So you're exactly right, in orchards and also in vineyards. And when we worked with the company that provides us the seed, and we were walking through this and telling them what we wanted to develop this blend, he said, the gentleman I spoke to there, he said, we have the exact things that we use sometimes in orchards. Now let's just get the, ratios right for your needs, but you're exactly right. Orchards, vineyards, areas like that.
So to get this started, you need more water up front to get it started, and then you can back off a little bit. Is that how that would work?
Excuse me. Yes, that is correct. Absolutely. So during the establishment period, which is about 26 to 32 days, somewhere around in there, obviously during germination, we don't want the seeds to necessarily go dry, because if they germinate and they don't get good establishment into the soil, the roots, then what'll happen is they'll wither, right? I mean, the seeds will germinate and then they'll die off. So yes, so for about the first 26 to 32 days, like I keep saying, around that mowing period, you'll want to make sure that you keep good moisture on it. And then once that's established and the roots are in and you have good, good roots, then you can start to back off on the water. That's exactly right.
So it's just an investment you have to make up front, and then it pays you back.
That's right.
Over a very long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the most part, a lot of people, they'll cut their watering back between 50 to 70%, something like that, which is drastic, especially with the way things are now. And, some of the other things that we have, which we'll talk about more, they also help, like the Manna dry and liquid and flora, Manna flora, which all of those things help build the soil health, which then the soil, as we build the soil health, all of that in the soil acts as little sponges. So you think of a dinner plate, it's called a cation exchange capacity. But you think of a dinner plate, it's big, it'll hold a lot. You think of a dessert plate, it's small, it's going to hold a dessert, just very little. So if you have a soil that is just, has a low CEC, or it's called a cation exchange capacity, it's a dessert plate that holds very little water, nutrients, any of those things. So as we build the soil health, naturally your plate's going to get bigger, holding more water and doing those types of things.
All right, Brandon. So my seed is supposed to arrive, I think, today. Like, I've been tracking it. I'm really excited. So tell me exactly what we need to do when we plant it. Now, like I said, all of it has been recently, well, most of it has been recently disturbed because we buried these tanks and then we had a skid steer come out and level it, right? Not level, it's all on a hillside and stuff, but it's smoothed over. And right now, because it's so dry, it's very powdery.
Yeah.
Like everything, it needs to be watered, but I wasn't quite sure when we should do that, if I should wait to plant the seeds and then water it to crust it or crust it before. So I'll let you just explain it all to me so I do it right.
Not a problem. So like you said before, you have the neighbor kids raking rocks. That's the first thing you'll want to get done, right? Get the rocks out of there so you don't have rocks actually in your lawn. So that's the first thing that you'll do. You'll go ahead and prep it by raking it. Since it has been disturbed, as long as the whole area has been pretty well disturbed, there's a couple of things. I don't know if the people that put in the actual tanks kept the topsoil or not, or if they just put the tanks in. Perfect. Yeah, I don't know if they just put the tanks in and said, okay, we're going to grade it back over. I don't know what you did there, but it's important that we have good, healthy soil up on the top, obviously, about 0 to 6 inches down. And so if it wasn't actually, the topsoil wasn't pulled off to the side and then put back over, that's okay, because the products that we've sent to you, the Manna Dry, the liquid, and the Flora will help actually build that microbiome in the soil. So
yes,
go ahead and rake the rocks away. It's been disturbed over the top. So you don't have to go through and till it or lightly till the top. Usually you want to have, some sort of tillage or something to break up that top. You are correct that you will want to go ahead and water it. Now, the way that I would suggest you do it is you would use the Manna Dry, which is a microbial food. It's a dry microbial food that contains trace minerals and other things. We've developed it over years of soil health research. You will want to go ahead and evenly spread that over approximately, I think you said it's about 11,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, you use that at about 12 and a half pounds per thousand, right around there. So the boxes that we sent you of that'll be just about enough to do that entire 11,000 square foot area. So you'll, get a fertilizer spread or something in order to spread that evenly over the top of that area. Then you'll want to go ahead and incorporate that slightly, or you can incorporate it by lightly raking it. So you'll just kind of incorporate that down into the soil. Then what you would do is you would utilize the Manna liquid, and you can use that at about 3 ounces per 1,000 square feet for this project, since we're using the dry and the liquid together. And you would want to go ahead and treat that whole area. And you can utilize, since it's a liquid product, we actually have a sprayer called a Chapin hose-in sprayer that you can put that in and spray that out over it. Or if you have a compression sprayer, like a backpack sprayer, anything that would allow that liquid material to be sprayed out over the soil as well. Okay. So you would do that. You would go ahead and prep it that way. And then after you do the Manna liquid, you would come back and you would use that same hose-in sprayer, and you would do the Manna Flora, basically. And so it is steps. And you say, well, why can't I mix the Manna liquid and the Flora together? And it's a pH issue. So that Manna liquid is its pH pretty low for stabilization. So we want to put those two out separately. So then the Flora would be put out, and you would soak that area down then with the Flora. And at that point, then you're pretty well prepped. You would let that area dry out. Like you said, there's crusting potentially. We don't want to plant the seeds and then next thing you know, have those get crusted over and not be able to emerge out of the soil itself.
Yeah.
Then after we do that, then it would be time to go ahead and spread the seeds evenly over that area. Go ahead and spread them out, like you said, or just evenly. So you'll take all that seed, which the seeding rates is about between 4 and 6 pounds per 1,000 square feet on a pure seed, meaning that's you're not overseeding, but you're seeding it 4 to 6,000. You have a 50-pound bag, so we're going to be right in that range of what you're going to need for that 11,000 square feet. We'd spread those out evenly, making sure that they make good soil contact. So there's even in some instances, what you would do is you would actually take a roller or something like that, and actually you can roll the seeds in, or something that would press them down slightly. Now you don't want them real deep; you would just want them pressed into the soil slightly, making good soil contact. At that point, then you can use like barley straw or something to cover over the top of it. And what that does is that will help with moisture retention as we're trying to get these established. So we're not spraying water out, the sun bakes down on it, and the next thing you know, the moisture's gone quickly. So by spreading that straw out over that area, and it doesn't have to be a thick layer, right? It's just a layer to cover the soil. Then as you start to water it, it's almost acts as basically like a cover crop, but it's just like a dead straw or something like that laying on the soil. When you do that, then it allows that moisture to stay in the soil. Okay. And the best way to do it is, so we've put the flora down one time at that point. We put the seeds down, we put them into the soil, we spread out the straw. That's when you would come back with the second application of flora over the seeds, because that helps with germination, establishment, and nitrogen fixation. It really helps build the life of the soil and get those seeds going. And then at that point, once you do that last spraying of that flora, then it's time to just start watering it and making sure that those germinate and come up. And that's the basis of how it's done. Watering it, sometimes even, and this is the hardest part, is during the establishment period, you don't want it to go dry. If you allow it to go dry, there's a chance that they've germinated. Those roots are so small that they might not have enough ability to continue to grow. Then that's when it could potentially kill it, right? In that very early stage. And just, you would water it, making sure that it stays damp and moist, and then it'll start to germinate. It depends. Microclover, the Pipilina microclover, is about a 7 to 15 day germination period. So you might not see the clover right away. The others is around the same. You usually see good germination within 7 days. For the other grass, the creeping red and hard red fescue, and then that's it. So yeah, go ahead.
Keeping dry or keeping it wet, are we talking twice a day, 3 times a day? We're in June. This is late. We should have done it earlier, just couldn't.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly right. We will want to keep it, and you'll have to check like the way that it is, right? Like your actual climate. If it's, it could be 2 to 3 times a day, maybe even 4, like once in the morning, once mid, you see what I'm saying? Just so we make sure that stays moist throughout the entire day for germination. Just like when you're germinating like garden seeds, you don't want those to go dry. You keep them nice and moist for that germination period.
Yeah.
You are correct. It is a little bit late. We're talking June. It still can be done. We're selling this all over the nation still. People are purchasing it and overseeding and reseeding. The next window, as we get into July, that's when we're really pushing the envelope. If you get into that portion, then you'll want to probably wait until like August, end of August, September, when those temperatures start to change again. But you're right. So potentially, 3 times all the way up to maybe 4, but break it up into blocks, right? So in morning, mid, and then evening time.
Okay.
And that's the way it'd be for the watering of it. Then after we get it established, it comes up, it's going to require some water to get it established. Then you can do a mowing if you want to, or just let it continue to grow up. You don't have to necessarily mow it. Some people will let it grow. Some people mow it down. It just depends on what your wants are. And then we can take, after it's nice and established, we can utilize that flora again, and we can do another application of it. And that just continues to build the health of the actual grass itself. Once that's completed, then basically not only the health of the grass, but the health of the soil, both of those things are pretty well established, because we're not wanting to use chemicals on it, right?
Right.
If we're not using chemicals and we're not using synthetic fertilizers on it, naturally that ecosystem has started then. And then that's when the nitrogen fixation happens and all of those types of things. So that's the basis of getting it started.
That's so exciting.
Good.
And then future maintenance. So other than making sure that it's watered occasionally and maybe mowed, is there anything I need to think about?
Not really. I mean, it's for the most part, that's really about it. Some people do like to, every once in a while put out more life, or, like the flora or put out some of the, liquid micro manna to feed the bacterias and things like that. But we're really not focused on taking care of the grass. At that point, we're focused on feeding the soil, which will then naturally do the remaining of it. But it will get to a certain point in time, just like I was telling you, like with my eco lawn this year, I have done nothing but I turned on the water for a bit, let it water, let it come up, and that's all I've done. Is very, very little watering. There's no fertilization that's been done. I haven't put out any of the flora, the liquid micro manna, or the dry micro manna at all. It's now operating as an ecosystem, and it just naturally does what it does.
That's cool. I like that.
All of those products too, can you just use them in your garden or underneath your fruit trees?
Yes, 100%. That's the way they were developed. So we developed them actually to build soil health and to feed soil microbiology, which naturally will then feed your trees, or whatever it may be, your garden or house plants or flowers. I mean, you name it, that's what we did. And so you're exactly right. It can be used in gardens. They can be used on, turf. It can be used with trees, fruit trees. It can be used on literally anything that you have that's living that has soil. The liquid micro manna as well as the flora can be even foliar sprayed on the actual plants itself to help make sure that there's good biological populations and health growing on the plants. So absolutely, not only is it for lawns, it can be used on anything that you grow.
I'm so excited. Like, I'm so totally excited. I just can't believe that I found you. Like, I was looking all over thinking somebody's got to be making something like this. And so I'm not sure you have much competition out there because I didn't see much.
Yeah, there's not much competition, truthfully. And it's a blessing. At the end of the day, we like to educate people and we like to work with people. And there's a reason why you found us, I mean, God plays a role in all of these things. And that's what we've seen over the past 14 years of our business, of people that we deal with and maybe opportunities that have passed us by. And you're right. There's not much competition. And the people that do actually go out and look, they find at some point. The doors will be open per se. And that's the thing, is we're able to build these relationships with people across the nation, really, that we help out, that when they want to learn or they're looking for something specific, we run into each other, our paths cross, and then we're able to educate, we're able to help. We share our knowledge with other people. That's really what we love to do, and people that are willing to listen and learn, we'll spend all the time in the world teaching, because this is, we're living in times where these are the things that have to be done. Agricultural ground is going away. And, for all the years of use of chemical fertilizers, of all of those things that have happened, and big agrochem companies being involved and things like that, the soils are destroyed. And as soils are destroyed, food supplies are going to be destroyed. As food supplies are being destroyed, unfortunately, people don't understand how to grow food. They don't understand how to do those things.
That is true.
So one of the things that we have going on right now is a World War III Victory Garden Challenge. And we've got this this playlist where what we're trying to do is help people start growing gardens in their backyards. And one of the huge issues that some people have is that this soil has never been worked, right? And the soil is just, there's issues. And so something like the micro manna or something like that might be very helpful, especially for some of these that the soil is just sterile.
That's exactly correct. I mean, you hit it right on the dot. I mean, to a T, that's what we developed it for, is to basically be able to take soils that are void of life, meaning biological life and soil life, and take those soils and be able to feed them with the proper things they need within that micro manna product line per se. It's really a technological line of products that we're able to do. And then it takes soils that are very void of life or not healthy at all and bringing to thriving soils, which will then allow you to very easily grow plants, things like that, gardens, trees, you name it. And that's how it was developed, actually.
Cool. So, okay, one of the other issues sometimes that we have, and you guys I think have it in Colorado too, is the high alkalinity in our soil, right? Yes. Does this affect the alkalinity versus acidity of the soil?
100%. So you're exactly correct. Here where we live, we have very high alkaline soils, which is another reason why it's so great. You understand what we're dealing with. I mean, alkaline patches, sometimes you're talking salts that after storms, or maybe we do get a little rain, it'll soak to the top and you'll have salt patches. Very alkaline or septic soils, you know, things like that. And that's exactly right. As we build the microbiological populations or the bacterial populations of soil, and we get the soil food web operating properly, naturally, those bacteria will, you can't necessarily get rid of the salt and the alkalinity necessarily, but what'll happen is it starts to fix it into their cell bodies. And as those bacteria fix it into their cell bodies, it starts to buffer the soils and allows you to actually grow plants in, you know, gardens, whatever it may be, in soils that are very marginal to horrible. Whether that's
so
rocky,
cool.
yeah, all those things. Yeah, so that's exactly what it does. So if we can build the life of the soil, naturally the rest of it will happen.
That is just so cool.
Well, that's wonderful. I've got one for you.
Sure.
Our orchard is a chicken orchard. So we have chickens that go out. We put them back in at night, but all day they're roaming that orchard.
It's a fenced orchard.
It's fenced. Yes. So just wondering if we were to use that in there, would we have to, you know, fence off a portion and do it? And how long would that take? And then fence off another portion? Just wondering how we would do this, knowing that there's chickens in there kind of stirring everything up and tearing things up.
Sure.
Or would it survive chickens at all? The turf?
Yeah, you know, it will. You just have to, there will be some management. Okay. And when I say management, obviously, just like when you're managing, say, a pasture with cattle on it, you don't want to overgraze it. It's the same principle like with chickens, things like that. You would want to make sure they're moved so, you know, maybe it's not destroyed completely. The way it's going to help is if that does happen, we could use the flora and come back over those areas and actually put the flora back down in those areas that are heavily disturbed, which would then help them regenerate quicker, because that's kind of what it does. That flora helps with plants or soils that are, you know, kind of beat up or torn up. It allows them to repair themselves quickly. And the products that like, you know, Manna, that whole line, there's nothing in there that's going to necessarily hurt the animals either. It's only going to bring life to the system and then to the animals and all the way through the system. So you're exactly right. So you will have some management that you'll have to do, but you're able to repair it. Like say it gets a little bit overgrazed or torn up pretty bad in an area. We'll take that flora, put it out, and then it would repair itself very quickly, or much quicker than just if you left it. So that would be the basis of it.
Would we then fence off a little area in there and seed it, let it, like we're talking, get it going and established, and then maybe let them into that a little bit and fence off another area? Is that kind of
for establishment, that's possible to do it that way. So the creeping red fescue grows by rhizomes, which creep through the soil itself. Uh-huh. So once we get those established, those rhizomes shouldn't necessarily be torn all the way out. Do you see what I'm saying? So actually, once we're able to get those patches established, what will end up happening is those roots should stay there as long as we can get the grass to regrow. So that's exactly right. It's great though, if you do take smaller areas. It's called mob grazing per se. You've maybe heard of that before. It's very small paddocks that you utilize for like the chickens to graze on. And then, you know, you move them to the next little paddock, allow them to graze there. And their manures and things like that are actually doing some fertilization as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Like
I don't know if you,
yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of that or not before, or if the
yes.
channel has, but absolutely, it's a way to do it. It's just mob grazing the areas, very small paddocks, and then just moving them. And then by the time you get back here, that should be repaired and continuously do that. So yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited. I am so excited, Brandon. Thank you so much. First, thank you for developing this. Like, wow, what a huge blessing. I can't wait. It's been a long time coming for us because we've had to wait for these water tanks, right? And financially to be able to put them in, and then with all the supply issues and all that. So now my dreams come true, right? Now it's going to be green and beautiful and sustainable. And I just can't wait. So thank you for your help and for creating this fabulous product for
Yeah.
us.
Absolutely, not a problem at all. And I appreciate the opportunity as well. You know, it goes both ways. It's not just a one-way road. You know, we do this and then we like to help people. And as we help people, the word spreads and it just gets better and better for everybody, you know, for the people utilizing it, for us. And people really start to understand, if you ask, I mean, this easiest way to put it, understand really about sustainability, about not necessarily always having to have all of these inputs to have just a beautiful place. So absolutely. So thank you guys as well. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And for our viewers, go visit RockyMountainBioAg.com. We'll leave a link in the description too, but they've got some really great products. And now you can see what it's done for us. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Check it out. It's been 4 weeks and this yard has changed from this desert wasteland to actually something that's well on its way to becoming beautiful and green and highly water efficient. So thank you so much, Brandon from Rocky Mountain BioAg. We are just so excited about this.
And now for the question of the day. What are you doing to manage your property and to become more water efficient? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.